This presentation is going to be over solution-focused brief therapy with adolescents. Hello, this is Kayla, and I'm going to be discussing what solution-focused therapy is. So, solution-focused therapy is an evidence-based practice focusing on the future. And whenever we're looking at solution-focused therapy, a client's history is not a key part during this type of therapy. So, unlike modalities such as CBT or DBT, we are not extremely focused on looking at the client's past and processing some of the things that have happened in the past. We are really focusing on the problem at hand that brought the client into therapy in the first place and coming up with solutions to this problem that brought them to therapy. According to the article by Bannock, they talk about how solution focused therapy has been originated from constructionism. And basically, what this means is they claim that the individual's idea about what is real, including the idea of the nature of his problems, competencies, and possible solutions, is being construed in daily life in communication with others. So, the way that I interpreted this is talking about problems with other people helps you come up with solutions to that problem. And then we're going to move on to talk about how Bannock also claims that solution focused therapy is also considered to be a type of cognitive behavioral therapy in a sense. They talk about how some of the same learning principles of classical and operant conditioning are applied both in regular problem focused therapy, such as cognitive behavioral therapy, and solution focused brief therapy. They also discuss how some of the same behavioral therapeutic processes is followed in both therapeutic techniques. And then some key points for solution focused therapy include the development of a solution is not necessarily related to the problem. The client is the expert. If it's not broken, do not fix it. If something works, continue to do it. And if something does not work, do something else. So basically, what this is just some key points talking about what makes solution focused therapy work. And the main thing is that the client is the expert and them finding out what works for them and what helps them with the problem at hand is going to be really important. And if it works for them, don't try and fix it. It might not be ideal for other people, but if it works for them, that is perfectly okay. And then some of the techniques used for solution focused therapy include the miracle question. So this is where you ask about a future situation without the problem and what a life would look like without the problem. And this is something that is used throughout solution focused therapy. And then we're going to look at the exception question. This asks, what was different when the problem was not happening? So looking at how life has changed for them since the problem started occurring. Scaling questions are used often to rate feelings of control over the problem, typically on a scale from 1 to 10. And this is used throughout the therapeutic process to look at change throughout the process of therapy and how much has changed since therapy started. Another one is a coping question. So the client describes how previous problems were overcome. So talking about different strengths and resources and coping skills used to overcome past problems. And then formula first session tasks. So the family observes relationships they want to continue. They find the strengths. So identifying the strengths that the client has in their life is what this is talking about. Normalizing. So this is translating negative fixed labels describing themselves or problems into descriptions of actions. So this means changing the meaning of these descriptions into normal or positive acts. Also consider depathologizing situations. Another technique used is do something different. It's an intervention with vague instructions for family to do something different. So if what they're doing is not solving the problem, doing something different and encouraging them to continue to test out new things to see if those help as well. And then we have complaint pattern interruption. After the pattern in a small way, alter the pattern in a small way. Do something different tactic that requires a conscious effort while the problem behavior is occurring. So if there is a pattern of something occurring, of the client doing something while the problem is happening, having them try to um, change the way that they go about that problem. And the last one that we're going to talk about is surprise tasks. So this is another type of a do something different. It introduces randomness into the system due to things that will surprise other members so that when members act unpredictably. So this is kind of just doing something completely different, something random whenever the problem occurs to help kind of just like change the dynamic of the situation a little bit. And that is a brief description of what solution focused therapy is. Thank you. Hi, this is Kayla. So with solution focused therapy, it is a short-term therapy that is used, and from different studies and things that I have looked at, many individuals have on average about 8 sessions. In an article that was done in the Children and Youth Services Review in 2021, there are 5 individuals in studies that showed that 8 sessions was what they used out of the 12. The other ones in the session kind of ranged between 2 to 7, but 8 was the most common out of all of them. So recommended length of treatment for adolescents, I would say, is 8 sessions on average.
When we look at how the components of solution-focused brief therapy are carried out in practice, there are a few specific techniques and assumptions that are integral to this model. Solution-focused brief therapy takes place within the context of talk therapy sessions through solution-focused interviewing. Some of the specific techniques for this type of interviewing will be discussed on the next slide. Within solution-focused brief therapy, there is a focus on change rather than a focus on the problem. The therapist needs to be aware of the problem, of course, but they do not dwell on this for long in therapy sessions. The client is also the one that is ultimately responsible for the solutions within this method. They are able to own the change and goals during the process. There is also an assumption with this method that the problem does not occur all the time. And this is key to the change process with solution-focused brief therapy, because it is where all the progress stems from. Solutions are created out of the exceptions from the problem. This model allows clients to take note of the exceptions to their problem and find success in recreating these exceptions, which will give them hope for future success. As Koob and Love pointed out with this model, it is easier and more relevant for families, or I would add, or individual clients, to build on their own strengths than to repeat successful behaviors than to adopt the strategies that work for someone else. And that is truly what's at the heart of this therapeutic method. There are some key techniques involved in carrying out solution-focused interviewing when engaging in solution-focused brief therapy. Greenberg and Associates use the acronym MECSTAT to help practitioners remember each technique for this method. First, we have the miracle question. This is a core technique within solution-focused brief therapy. The question usually goes something like this. Imagine tonight, while you are sleeping, a miracle happens and your problem resolves itself completely. You wouldn't know right that minute because you were asleep. What would be the first thing you would notice when you wake up that would indicate that the problem has been solved? This helps clients to see the problem more tangibly and more practically. It also strengthens hope for what the future could look like when the problem is gone. Next are the exception questions. These are meant to help the client identify specific times when the problem was not occurring or burdening them. Helping the client identify these moments of success, as well as what led to them, helps clients to repeat this success in the future. Coping questions help clients to identify how they have managed to endure the problem so far. These questions can include reflections as well. For example, it sounds like you are having an especially tough day. How did you manage to bring yourself to session today? It acknowledges the problem, but still focuses on working toward a solution based on their own actions. Scaling questions help to make the problem limited and measurable, and help to make the progress more visible. Various emotions and perceptions can be measured on a 10-point scale throughout treatment to help clients notice their success over time. Timeouts are not always included in sessions, but can be beneficial at times. These breaks should only last a minute or two and should occur toward the end of the session. Timeouts offer a moment for all to reflect on the session. At the end of the session, the therapist may offer accolades to the client. This is a powerful time to recognize the client's strengths, success, and growth that the therapist has noticed during the session. This technique allows clients to leave the session feeling hopeful. Finally, tasks are discussed to close the session. Tasks are the homework that bridge the gap between this session and the next. They allow clients to continue working on the change process independently. These are some of the core components practitioners can use to carry out solution-focused brief therapy.
Number of sessions. Length of treatment for client can range between 6 to 8 weeks depending on the client's effort. This consists of if a client is willing to participate or is not, or does not understand what's going on. It might take them a little bit longer for sessions to take place due to having to explain or go over the same things. Process of SFBT. The first thing that the therapist likes to do is point out or get from the client their concerns so that they know the starting point. And then co-construction, alternate meanings. So the therapist points out different meanings or different viewpoints that the client can look at, and then what the client wants the future to look like. This is kind of a motivation for the client to change or do things different so that they can achieve these goals.
Just like every other therapeutic modality, solution-focused brief therapy has both strengths and weaknesses. Some of the strengths include emphasis on solutions, does not dwell on the past, brevity, and the client being in charge. To go into more depth on the emphasis on solutions, I want to specifically talk about how this can apply to adolescents, since that is our focus group. And so there has been research shown that solution-focused brief therapy works really well with students specifically that have more negative behaviors. And that's because it allows the students to express themselves and kind of look at things that they quote unquote don't want. And then that way they can kind of shift it to what they do want, which just gives it a more positive outlook and kind of empowers them to make more positive changes in the choices that they make. And that can be said for adults and anyone else, not just adolescents. Another strength is that it does not dwell on the past. And so solution-focused brief therapy, like it says in the name, solution is really what we're focusing on, is how to move forward and resolve the problem. And it doesn't spend a lot of time dwelling or worrying about the past, what's gone wrong, or necessarily what that problem is, but how we can move forward from it. Another strength is
brevity or the length of time that it takes. And so research has shown that solution focused brief therapy can show a lot of positive results and be successful in a shorter amount of time, which is obviously a strength because we want to make sure that our clients are seeing success with their treatment. And also, a strength would be that the client is more in charge. And so, in this therapeutic modality, um, it's really the client that is focusing on their own goals and their perspective and their viewpoint. It's not the therapist that's kind of leading the way or, I guess, telling them what to do in a sense, but we're really there to help empower them to make those choices and kind of lead their own path to success. Some of the weaknesses include potential lack of confidence in the therapist. And so this can kind of like the opposite of the client being in charge is that for some individuals, it could just depend on culture or just individual preference, that the fact that the therapist isn't leading in such a strong way, that might make the client feel a lack of confidence or trust in the therapist, like they may not know what they're doing. And that could cause them to not want to come back or not just have that trust in the therapist. And we know that there needs to be trust in order for it to be successful. And then also another weakness would just be that some people need to be able to discuss their problems. So while it's great that this modality focuses on the future and how to come up with solutions, we really need to not negate the fact that some people need to explore and dive deeper into their problems because a lot of the time that's the root cause to these behaviors. And so it's hard to move forward if we're not handling and resolving issues from the past. And then also, another weakness would be that kind of ties into what I said previously, but the reasoning behind thoughts and behaviors are ignored. And so, if we can tie that back to adolescence as well, while it's great that they can use this modality to focus on the future and change the way they want things to look like at school, for example, we really can't ignore the reasons behind why they are misbehaving in school in the first place, because that really could be the root of their behaviors. And we need to address that in order to move forward and find positive results.
Since SFBT is built on the premise that the client is the expert, overall, it makes a good fit for most cultures. However, there are some key concepts that a clinician should keep in mind when working with individuals from a different cultural background. One thing the clinician should always remember is to remain in their not knowing position. This allows the clinician to retain information from the client regarding their perception of the problem and what the problem means to them. As the client takes on the role of the expert, the clinician is able to assist in the process to search for a solution by formulating ongoing questions from the client's last answer. This continues to promote the concept that the client holds the power to find the solution that best fits their current issue. SFBT also puts into practice a strengths-based approach to build confidence in the client that a solution can be found. A clinician that utilizes and builds on the client's cultural strengths and resources more efficiently and effectively can help the client find solutions that are relevant and feasible to their unique sociocultural environment. This can also help the client tap into already existing resources, skills, knowledge, beliefs, motivations, behavior, and social networks within their cultural context. Another important consideration the clinician should take into account is the possibility that the client can come from a deficit perspective, which can lead to disempowerment as they may already devalue themselves and or their ability to find a solution. This perspective can come from the stigma that is attached to revealing one's mental health problems in a therapeutic setting. There could be a fear of shaming the family name or losing face, which can be found in Arab, Asian American, Hispanic American, and African American populations.
And these are our references.